So I went kind of on a little bit of a quest to ask a lot of my friends and colleagues, like, what they thought I was good at. Few people who said, you're really good with your money and you don't seem to be worried about it, especially when you're not working. How do you do that? There's a deeper part of ourselves, right? Because if everybody could understand money just by reading a book or, studying this stuff, then everyone would be great with their money.
Yeah.
However, most people are not great with their money because of the emotional piece.
The way we met is that I joined your program because I realized last year, I was like, okay, I am in this lack mentality and this old way of like, as an artist, you suffer, you don't have any money.
There's a tie-in to our money and the feeling of safety and security. And so if we don't feel safe and secure, then we're going to really feel panicked and feel that sense of scarcity, right?
For me, it always was like, but I enjoy this so much. I don't, it's like money kind of is not even in the mix here, because it's like something that gives me so much. It fulfills me in so many ways that money is like, I feel like it's nice, of course, but it's not the purpose. It's not like something that I expect even.
How did I grow up? What did I experience as a kid with my parents? And what did they believe around money?
We need to go deeper.
How did you do that?
It's so important, right? In order for us to keep our light, to keep in that sense of abundance and hope, and not get sucked into the fear place, is to be surrounded by people who are in that light, right? And doing beautiful things, doing the things that you really want to do, and creating, and also is like a partner to you, right? And can really help you and support you in all of these different ways.
So, dear Katy, welcome to Ambitiously Intelligent. We're so excited to have you. And thank you for making the time. And yeah, let's just dive right in. I'm going to introduce you. Katy Chen Mazzara, you are a trauma-informed financial coach with a background in journalism and over 15 years as a TV producer. Wow. I just want to ask you, you've lived so many creative lives as a journalist, as a producer, and now as a coach. Can you tell us what was the moment where you realized, maybe it wasn't one moment, but when you realized that it's time to change something, that, you need to like go forward with your journey?
Absolutely. I think it was when I first turned 40. And I was working in television where it was like 12 to 20-hour days, and I was traveling 6 months out of the year. And I was just getting really tired. I was like, okay, I can do this for a couple more years. However, I knew by the time I hit 50, I would not want to still be in television and working in the field and all of those things anymore. So that's when I decided I wanted to try and figure out something new and work for myself, essentially, and I didn't know what that was in the beginning. So I went kind of on a little bit of a quest to ask a lot of my friends and colleagues, like, what they thought I was good at or what my superpowers were. And a lot of my colleagues said, well, you're a great producer, you're, good at what you do. However, there were a few people who said, you're really good with your money and you don't seem to be worried about it, especially when you're not working. How do you do that? And that's when I was like, okay, there's something here that, is really interesting.
But then again, the producing, you were 15 years in the TV industry. How did it come about? How did you enter the industry?
Yeah, it was so interesting that I think that, so many times in our lives, I think things happen almost, by accident, but it's not, I don't really believe in kind of coincidences. I really believe that it's really fate in some ways. I was a journalist for many years. I was a journalist for about, almost 10 years. And the last thing that I did in journalism, it was around September 11th. It was right after September 11th. The US was about to go to war. And I was working for XM satellite radio, and I was one of the youngest news anchors for them. And they had decided right before the US going into war with Afghanistan that they were going to lay off the whole news department. And so I wasn't, I was like, oh, okay. So now I
Where
wasn't
do I go?
right, exactly. But I wasn't upset. I just was like kind of dumbfounded that this was happening. Yeah. And one of my good friends from my university days, she and I were in journalism together. She was actually working on a kind of a fashion makeover type of show. And she said, do you want to come and work with me? You don't have to start at the bottom. You don't have to be a PA. You can actually start off as an associate producer. And I was like, yeah, I think I do want to do that. And so that's how I started. I started working on this fashion makeover show, and then kept going right from there. And it was all because of somebody I know. And that's one thing that I always tell new people who are getting into the business. It's like every single job that I had in the entertainment industry, it was because of someone I knew. So I always say, like, it's who you know that's going to get you into the doors, but it's what you know that's going to keep you there.
Okay, so that's the thing and the power of networking, right?
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
okay. So because it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy in the States to be a producer.
Right.
And on TV, I mean, it's hard work, as you said yourself.
Mhm.
So you were from one job, you were just then recommended for the
Yes.
next one, right? And that's kind of how it
Yes.
continued. And it was
Yes.
always television. Did you ever do independent? Did you ever?
I did an independent documentary film
Mhm.
that I actually raised money for and got a lot of money even before there was such a thing as like Seed and Spark and all of those fundraising platforms that we have now.
Mhm.
And I was able to raise about $30,000 for that film just by sheer determination, basically.
We need to go deeper.
Yeah,
What
yeah. I
did
was
it
thinking the
entail?
same. How did you do that?
Yeah, I did some fundraising. I actually even asked a couple of now like pretty well-known bands to come on and do a music performance, a concert, and I sold tickets to this concert and got a lot of money that way. And then I also did a silent auction. So I asked a lot of people to donate artwork or clothing or anything. And then people bid on all of these amazing things. And so that was another way that we were raising money. So I just did whatever I could think of to actually raise money. And yeah, we raised $30,000. I was able to pay the entire crew and get this documentary off the ground. And actually, we were very close to actually selling the documentary too. However, the director and I had some differences when it came to what he wanted because he wanted it to focus it on something that was very narrow. The documentary was about the Miss Senior America pageant. So all of these women in their 60s, 70s, 80s and
Okay.
beyond. And it was a really fun pageant, but it was also like interesting and weird in some
Mm.
ways because a man like started it.
Okay.
That is
Yeah.
weird somehow.
Yes. Yes. And
Okay.
so I wanted it to show that, some of the weird behind the scenes stuff. And that's what a lot of the production companies, when we were trying to sell the project, that's what they wanted as well. But he wanted to focus in on a few of the women, including one of the women was like his aunt.
Mhm.
And so it became more of a personal story that then a lot of the production companies we were in talks with, like they didn't want that, right, in terms of
Mm.
their direction. So we decided to part ways, but we did win a couple of film festivals, including one here in Los Angeles.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Thanks.
How long did it take to fundraise $30,000?
It probably took about a year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because, again, back then we didn't have any fundraising platforms. Nothing was online, right? Like
Mm,
everything
mm,
was, yeah, like all of the things that we were doing were in-person things that
Right.
mm.
That's
helped
where
raise
shared
money.
determination comes in, I guess.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, you talked about it a little bit yourself, the recommendation for like young producers or those who want to start off. Um, what like if there's this young girl and she's thinking about it, what would you tell her? Like what would be the steps?
Hmm. I think, well, the first step is to really just start to talk to as many people as you possibly can talk to,
Mm-hmm.
anybody who may know anyone, right? Like, don't be shy about it, right? I
Mhm.
think that a lot of times when you get started, you feel a little bit hesitant about asking people for help or for advice or for whatever. However, that's kind of the best time to ask, right? Because most people love giving advice. Most people love talking about themselves, so it's actually a great time to just say, hey, can you tell me a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
about how you got started? What did you do? How I can get in the door. And then just by meeting all of these different people, somebody's going to think about a role for that person, right? Like, and then the next thing I would say is don't be afraid to start from the bottom, right? Like I didn't have to start from the bottom. However, I don't know if that really benefited me. I
Mhm.
think like in throughout my 15 years in television, because I did everything
Mm-hmm.
in, both unscripted and I went into scripted and I went into development work. I think I would have benefited so much from learning at the bottom level, right? Because there's some key foundational pieces that sometimes you can't learn when you actually skip the step, right?
Mm.
Mhm.
And it's so good to just really understand also what are your strengths? What brings you, what would be the one thing that people would want to bring you on over and over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason I think I was really successful in the business was because I was also a really good negotiator, right? And which leads to what I'm doing now perfectly, right? And I was a really good negotiator, so I did a lot of the deals ahead of time, right? For any project that we were starting out with. So
Mm.
locations, I would actually even be able to get like different countries to sponsor the production to come and film.
Mhm.
Right. So then, how sometimes like there are some filmmakers like Woody Allen who does this as well, right? Like, a film set in Paris isn't because he really wanted it to be in Paris. I mean, maybe, I'm sure he does, because I'm sure he loves Paris. However, it's because Paris actually paid him to come and film there, right? And
Pretty smart.
so, yeah, exactly. And so that was a lot of what I was doing, not on Woody Allen's scale, but on all of these different TV
Mm.
productions, I would come in and actually negotiate deals with different countries, different locations, even music bands, right? Even musicians and things like that. So everything became either they paid for or it was like a trade out in some kind, so for in exchange for advertising, for example, right? Like let's
Mhm.
say it's a big hotel chain or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we would show the signage, we would show how beautiful the rooms are, we would talk about it, right? Like on the show that somebody would talk about it, in the same way that White Lotus is doing that, right? Now, so many different countries and places like want White Lotus to come in and
Mhm.
film because they're giving tourism, right? Like they're giving lots of people reasons to go to Sicily, to go to Thailand, to go to Hawaii, right? Like, and experience the places where they stayed and all of the places to see, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, and that is um, and I think that there's so much more room for that than people even realize because you can do it creatively and also in a way that feels organic to the storyline. Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
But that is exactly your superpower, as you said yourself, is
Mhm.
that you are. So the way we met is that I joined your program
Mhm.
because I realized last year I was like, okay, I am in this lack mentality and this old way of like, as an artist, you suffer, you don't have any money, and I was like, why am I not getting out of this? This doesn't make any sense because I know that it doesn't have to be true. I know a lot of successful artists that are making good money. And it's not because they are like A-listers or they're like, you know what I mean? And I found you, was really glad about that. And
Me too.
just amazing working with you. And you have this way of looking at things as you're doing now, where you just all these ideas pop up. You're like, oh, then do this and do that and blah blah blah. What I want to ask you first is like, you're obviously really good with money. I
Thank you.
love that. That's why
Yes.
people have to work with you as a money coach because just being around, as we know, the environment is everything. And then being around you, it is in a beautiful, beautiful way contagious. Like you're like, oh, wait, yeah. How would Katy think? Wait a minute. There must be other ways to think about this. What made you realize, like, what was the turning point for you to like help others to transform their relationship with money?
That's a great question. I think it started when I was a TV producer
Mm.
because the first time that first show, that style fashion makeover show ended, it was about a year or two after I first started. I was like very confused as to how most freelancers did it, right? Because before then, in journalism, you work for a company. So you didn't, you had a paycheck every 2 weeks, you had benefits with health insurance and everything else. And I know that, in Europe, you guys get the health insurance, but here in the US, if you don't work for a company, you don't really have access to health insurance,
Mm.
right? So I was trying to figure out how people did this, how people were able to pay for their health insurance, also pay down debts, save, even think about retirement, right? Because how do you think about retirement and investments when you don't even know if you're working 3 months from now or 6 months from now? Right.
Yeah.
And most shows, I mean, I've been lucky and I've had a few shows that lasted a while. However, there were many shows that were just 3 months here or 6 months there. And so I was trying to figure out how people did it. So I started reading all of these books about finance and realized I actually really like this stuff. It's really interesting to
Mm.
me. And I started doing it for myself. And so then when my friends and colleagues said that was my superpower, I was like, okay, I got to go back to school and relearn how to do all of this, because I can't coach somebody unless I really have the background. So I actually went back to the University of California at Berkeley, and they have an online financial planning program. And so learned everything from investments to taxes to estate planning, all of the things, right? Insurance, all of that stuff. And then realize also that there is a deeper part of ourselves, right? Because if everybody could understand money just by reading a book or, studying this stuff, then everyone would be great with their money.
Yeah.
However, most people are not great with their money because of the emotional piece, right?
Mhm.
And the reason that, like, most people get divorced over money, most people fight over money, most couples fight over money, right? And the reason is because there's an emotional component to it. There's a tie-in to our money and the feeling of safety and security. And so if we don't feel safe and secure, then we're going to really feel panicked and feel that sense of scarcity, right? So then I went back and got a trauma-informed certification as well to be able to go very deeply with my clients, right? And to talk about, the places in our childhood and the things that we may not have gotten, or the things that we may have experienced differently too, right? Because I've worked with twins before where one person was great with their money and the other person wasn't. They were twins. They grew up in exactly the same way. And yet the thing is, we experience things differently, right? And especially as actors or very creative souls, we are much more sensitive to our environments. So things affect us more deeply and things affect us in a way that can have other effects in the future, right? So something that somebody would say, for example, like when I was growing up, my parents fought about money all the time. And also my grandmother on my dad's side, she had a lot of money. And yet she was very, very cheap with her money, right? She was very much a hoarder. She would hold on tightly and say things like, oh, when I die, none of you are getting my money. I'm going to be buried with it, right? And so what I learned or what I heard and experienced growing up was, ooh, money is the cause of fighting and stress, and money makes people greedy and hoard, right? And I don't want to be like that. So in my 20s, I ended up just spending money as soon as it came in. Like as soon as it came in, it went out. Like there was nothing left in my bank account, right? Or my bank account would be like $20 every time, like, right before I had to pay bills, right? And so then I would realize, well, that's not sustainable, right? But where did that come from? And so that it came from all of these places from my childhood, right? And then now I have to like release those thoughts and release what I grew up with, right? In order to create what I want money to represent, right? So money now does not represent hoarding and greediness and fighting and conflict. Instead, now it represents for me freedom, right? And I tell everyone this, that like my husband and I, even though we may fight about other things, but we never fight about money.
Never.
Never, never,
Never.
never.
Like not once.
Not once.
Let's go there, girl.
Wow.
Not once.
Yeah. Not once. Not once. And we've been
Love it.
together for 14 years and been married for 12 years, right? And we have never once fought about money.
Okay, I'm gonna say something very personal here, you guys. And this is what happens when you're working with Katy, and I highly, highly recommend her. If you are not where you want to be with your money, if you know that you can have so much potential, which I know you do, and there's something in the way, you should definitely look at her program. You can work with her one-on-one. I really recommend it. And what I'm realizing, listen to you, and I've worked with you one-on-one too. I'm a part of the program, which is amazing, is that there was something, and it's very personal, and I'm going through something tough now, I have to say. And what I realized is that my partner, well, we are getting a divorce now. And he had always, I'd been unhappy in the relationship, but I always, I always wanted a happy family because I didn't have it as a child. So it was really, really important to me. It was more important than anything else. It was more important than my happiness that we as a family would be together. And there was something that he said to me frequently, and that was like, when you have money, you will leave. And because I was so trying not to like hold everything, I wanted to hold everything together. I wanted the kids to, I wanted this to be the happy family. I wanted everyone to be happy, even if it wasn't really serving me. That was one of the blockages that I was like, I shouldn't earn money. And I wasn't aware of this. And then last year, and I was at Valeria, this was when we were shooting our film. That's when I reached out to Kate and I was like, I need help. Can we work
I
together?
remember you were telling me that you were getting like some financial coach advice. At
Yes.
first, I was like, "Oh, good for you, good." And
Yeah.
then you described it as something as like life-changing.
Yeah.
Like there was something magical in this. So
Yeah.
I
And
can see that now.
there are these things where you just realize you're like, now it makes sense because it's like, why am I like, I feel like I'm really like blocking it. And I'm a fantastic coach myself, as you know, Kate, and as you, Valeria, know.
Yes.
I'm a fantastic actress. I have so much that I can give, and I love giving and love supporting. And I was like, what is that? Why?
Yeah.
And that was
Well,
a big one.
yeah, it's interesting because I think so many times we can't see our own blocks
Yeah,
as
no.
easily, right? Yeah, I've also worked with my own coaches, because yeah, I couldn't see my own stuff, and for the longest time, I think before I met my husband, I I felt like I was constantly in this place of like being a commitment phobe,
Mm.
right? And then a lot of times people think about commitment phobic tendencies as just in relationships, but it wasn't for me. It was just in everything. It was like with jobs and with places. I moved, in my 20s and early 30s. I probably moved like 17 times. And, the reason I think I loved and thrived in working as a freelance TV producer for so long was because I loved the change. I loved
Mm-hmm.
changing into, different shows and different content and different people. I love working with different people constantly. And it really fueled me in that way. And yet in relationships, it didn't, right? Because there was an endpoint. For me, was always an endpoint
Mm-hmm.
until I really realized, okay, then I started working with first a therapist. And then once the therapist wasn't able to kind of keep things moving ahead, because in some ways, the difference between therapy and coaching for me is that like therapy can go back to the past and we're working on those past things, and yet there's something about the future, right? Like we want to move forward. And I think that's where coaching comes in, is to help you to move forward and to start to take action, right? Not just dwell on the past. Like we can be informed of the past. And that's why I find being a trauma informed coach very important. However, now it's like we're not going to get stuck in the past. We want to move things forward, right? And
Mm-hmm.
with especially with money blocks, because a lot of times people don't even realize what their blocks are.
Yeah.
And I had somebody in a workshop one time say to me, like, I don't know if I have anything, because my parents were very supportive. They went to all my shows and my plays growing up, and he couldn't figure it out. And then we went deeply. We were going into a process of going deeply. And then he remembered that before he went to the university, his mom said, well, get another major just in case.
Mhm.
And that was it, right? That stuck in him. And he realized, oh, yeah, he was making money doing everything else except in his acting career, right? And the reason was because there was something that stuck in his mind that that's what his mom meant when she said to him, get another major just in case.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
are so many layers here because I kind of see this point. My story is very different. I was good with money always. I was, working, but I'm coming from a corporate legal world. And I was always very creative, but my family didn't want to have anything with this. They were like, this can be a hobby. So once you have a secure job, you can provide for yourself, then you can, enjoy this frivolities, as they called it. And still to this day, I mean, I think at first I confronted it with Eva actually because we spoke and she was telling me that, the creative jobs, you can earn with them, you can provide for yourself and like your family, and you can have a beautiful life. And in fact, you should, because this is work, right? But for me, it was such an escape from my world, like from the world where I had to like work hard, like push myself to do things that I probably didn't enjoy that much, be stuck in that career, in this circle. And for me, it always was like, but I enjoyed it so much. I don't, it's like money kind of is not even in the mix here because it's like something that gives me so much. It fulfills me in so many ways that money is like, I feel like it's nice, of course, but it's not the purpose. It's not like something that I expect even. And now that you're talking, I can see where it kind of comes from. I think it's a
Yes.
little bit of this self-sabotage that we do. We want
Yes.
something and then we fear it, and it just all comes biting us in
Yes.
interesting places.
In the butt. In the butt.
Exactly. Exactly there.
Yeah, and then I would say it can be what actors always talk about, the yes and, right? It can be fulfilling and create this happiness and this fulfillment for you, and it can also bring you money.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I kind of liked how you draw the distinction between therapy and coaching, because I had a similar idea in mind just in general, but I've never could put my finger onto it. Because sometimes you are aware of the pattern or you are aware of the situation that's, traumatic experience that you went through. But just by knowing that you went through it, there isn't kind of like the steps where that you can take to move forward. And to me, that's the purpose of any type of therapy or any type of coaching, to move forward, to learn from it, and to become better, to be better at something, to feel better. So what are the steps? Can you let us a little bit into your process that you go with the clients? What are the steps that you take with them? How do
Yeah,
you unpack
absolutely.
this?
Yeah. So the first thing is awareness, right? Like you were saying. And so whether that is awareness through therapy or awareness through what I help clients do, right? And to discover their money blocks, because so many of the things that happen, like if you think about it, it happens on the unconscious level, so underneath
Yes.
Yeah.
everything, right? And that's what's driving 90% of our habits, our every single day habits, right? Like when you wake up, what do? You go and brush your teeth most of the time, right? Or you go, um, you meditate or do exercise. You do the things that you have been doing over and
Mhm.
over and over again, right? And it becomes this unconscious thing. So we have to first of all make it conscious, right? And how do we make it conscious is by exploring what those beliefs are from the beginning. And so if you're listening to this, you can actually even ask yourself the question, right? Like, how did I grow up? What did I experience as a kid with my parents? And what did they believe around money?
Mhm.
Right. And if you don't know exactly what they believed around money, start to think about their actions around it. Were they stressed? My dad was always stressed out. Every time he had to do taxes, every single year. In the States, it's on April 15th, which is coming up this month, right? And he is the night before, he's at the kitchen table, and I can still see him when I was a little kid. I can still see him at that kitchen table, really stressed out. And if you even talk to him, he would bite your head off, right? And so, those are kind of the memories that you want to start to unlock within yourself. Okay, these are the way they started to act around money. And then what did that represent to you? Right? What did that mean for you? Right? Ask yourself that question is like, what did you make it mean in that moment too?
What did you make it mean? Okay, so
yes.
An example for that would be?
So an example of that would be like, let's take that same example. I would take it to mean when I was a kid and my dad bit my head off, I didn't make it mean like, oh, dad is stressed out about taxes, because I had no idea what taxes were. Right? As a kid, you have no concept of money or taxes or any of those things. Instead, what I felt was I'm unlovable, right? I'm not loved. Like, work or whatever he was doing is much more important than really taking care of me or loving me or listening to me. It's not worth it.
That's a thing. And that's all also when you worked with a trauma-informed approach, that's what then comes in, right?
Yes.
Did it help you when you went through the, yourself? You had, when you went to that.
Yes.
Yeah, right? You uncovered
absolutely.
things yourself, I assume.
Absolutely. Because part of trauma-informed training, it means that you can't take your clients where you're not willing to go. So you have to be willing to explore all of those sides of yourself, right? The darkness, the sadness, the anger, all of the things, and really work through your own stuff before you can actually help other people, right? Through their stuff. And so, yes, it was very challenging, right? Like it's a huge challenge because besides like all the hours you have to do to get certified with other clients, but it's like within yourself, they also make you do basically a thesis project. You make yourself a thesis project and then you work through your own stuff as well in the 9 months that we were doing this, so it was very intense, very emotional at times, right? And yet like you come out of it in such a different way, right? And so then you're able to create and hold space for other people and their traumas and whatever they're going through, right? Because if you haven't worked through your own stuff, like it's very hard to hold space for someone else.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, the environment that you grew up, and also people you are surrounded with. Sometimes I catch myself that there are things in my mind that I don't necessarily believe in, but just because I'm around like people or certain situations where they're saying something and it's kind of like somehow getting into the mix and starts to affect me, even though if I think about it, if I rationalize about it, I don't believe it true. But at the same time, somehow it just has this way through the back door, to kind of influence my decision making. That's why probably you should be aware of also, even if you maybe don't hold like strong beliefs, but like people who you're surrounded with. What do you think about that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that is one of the biggest pieces of this as well, right? Is that who you're surrounding yourself with is so important to your well-being, to your abundance thinking, because if everyone around you is fearful, right, all the time, you're going to be fearful. You're going to be in that place of scarcity, no matter how many mantras you do, right? Or how many things that you try to do for yourself, you're still going to be in it, right? It's like a constant pull into their vortex because in some weird ways, and I'm going to use a Star Wars analogy because I love Star Wars. The dark side is Probably even more powerful in some ways than the light, you know.
Mm.
And so getting pulled into somebody else's darkness is such an easier place. And that's why, like, they say misery loves company, right? There's like that
Mhm.
saying.
Sure.
And so many times when people are together and even working on a show where it's a toxic environment, right? Like I've noticed people trauma bond, right?
Mhm.
I worked on a show one time where the boss wasn't great. Like she was one of those people who literally threw food at her assistants and all of those things. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And all of those women that I worked with on that show, we all are still friends to this day. And it's
Mhm.
been, 20 years or whatever since that show ended. And the reason we're still friends is because we all trauma bonded, right? We were all so in fear of her that we all kind of got together and yes, complained about her and yet created this bond too, right? So
Mhm.
that is why I know that the dark side is stronger. And
Mm.
so it's so important, right? In order for us to keep our light, to keep in that sense of abundance and hope, and not get sucked into the fear place, is to be surrounded by people who are in that light, right? And doing beautiful things, doing the things that you really want to do and creating and also is like a partner to you, right? And can really help you and support you in all of these different ways.
Mm. That is
Yeah.
beautiful. And that is so true. It really is. Your environment is, yeah,
Everything.
something, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, that's why I like, I do one-on-one work, but I also love the group, right? Because the group work is like, that's where, a lot of times people can really find people who are like-minded, who are working towards the same goals, and how they can actually stay in that place of hope, right? And the
Mm.
place of abundance is within a group like that. And also it's the fastest way to manifest too, right? When
Mm.
Mhm.
everybody is working on something together, right? When lots of people are doing it together, you actually manifest that much faster as well.
I love that you in your program, you also have now what you offer is that even twice a week, it's like the workspace together where we meet
Mhm.
online and
Mhm.
go through it together.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think
Yes.
that's beautiful. Like because
Yeah.
that's also like really important that people can just like kind of hold hands and just go
Mhm.
like, okay, let's do this together, which can
Yes.
be. But I would love to talk about that because you work with a lot of artists. As
Yes.
I said in the beginning, we have this here in Europe really strong,
Mhm.
like the poor artist, the artist that lives off, I don't know, potatoes or noodle soup or whatever, and that's, crackers and is glad that they survive the month, if even. Um, how do you, and also like, how do you help? Like, where do you come in there? What is your work? How do you then, because this is so, and these are also like these common financial myths that are like creatives hold on to. Like, if you could
Absolutely.
tell us those that are very common and how would you like bust it or how would you work then with that
Yeah.
creative human being?
Well, first of all, did you know that the starving artist stereotype is actually a myth, right? Like
Mhm.
somebody created that for a story, like
No.
hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Yeah, they created that character of a starving artist for a story. And then people just sort of glommed onto that idea and then it got perpetuated and perpetuated. And nowadays, yes, there is some realities to it.
Mhm.
However, it's because we have all bought into that idea that if you are a true artist, you are not making money, right? And you
Mm.
don't and you don't care about money, right? Like Valeria was talking about too,
Exactly.
right? And that is actually a myth that harms us more than helps us. And the reason it harms us more than helps us is because that way, the people in power, the people who do have money, are going to take more advantage, right? Because you should be so lucky to actually work, right? And create art. It's the perfect thing of like a couple years ago when the writers and the actors strikes were happening, right? And then the corporations, the studios, and all of the big producers, they were fighting so hard against, giving more money, right, to artists. And there were a few producers who actually said that, like, oh, if, we're just going to wait it out and let them starve, let them lose their houses before we actually come up with an agreement, right? And this is what I'm talking about. It's like if we all buy into the idea that artists need to be starving and that you don't need to get paid because you're just happy to be there. You're just happy to do your art. Then other people are going to be able to take advantage of it. And then that stereotypes keeps perpetuating in and of itself. Whereas if you start to go, nope, I don't believe that. I believe I can actually create the most artistic piece of work, right, that I can ever do in my life and get paid lots of money for it, right? And I deserve to get paid lots of money for it, right? And that is the stereotype, and that becomes the common theme for every artist. Then the powers that be cannot take advantage anymore, right? It really starts with our belief system. And that is really part of my mission, right? Is why I do this work, is like, I want to shift and change the narrative around all of this, right? Because I also have seen 3 women in my life who stayed in abusive relationships because of the lack of money, the lack of resources, and they had young children they were taking care of, and they did not feel like they could take care of those children on their own without money and resources, right? And so it really has become my mission to say, yes, you can. And it starts with your belief system, right? Because I know that you would be that much better off if you were to just go out there and do your thing. And even if it doesn't start with a lot of money, right? That eventually you will be that much happier and you're going to create a much better future for your children instead of staying in that abusive situation.
That's what I want to ask you, because yes, let's maybe like be very specific. We speak about creatives, but what about women? What are the beliefs that they're holding in general from your practice? What is their impediment towards, being abundant and feeling that the money, not worrying about it?
I think one of the things has come up, and I think Ava might have mentioned this too, is that like women are natural caregivers, right? And you're in a place where you naturally think about the other person and your children, your partner, way more than you ever think about yourself. And I know this. I know this to be 100% true for every single woman I've ever worked with, right? I know it from the bottom of my heart as a woman, but I also have seen it over and over and over again with every single woman that I have worked with. All right. And that kind of thing is, I mean, of course, it's beautiful to be so giving and loving to your children, right? However, I actually do not believe it is the most important thing with a partner. And here's why. And here's also why, like my husband and I don't fight about money, right? Because we are on an even playing field when it comes to that power dynamic. Okay. And so I know that it's like he is his own person. He's also a grown up. And so it's important for him to actually take care of himself and for me to take care of myself, right? And of course, there are times when we're not feeling at our best and we can be there for each other to take care of the other person. However, when nothing is going on, it's like you take care of you and I take care of me, okay? And the best thing that I've ever learned is to start each day with a very simple exercise of like checking in with myself, right? So I usually will just put a hand on my heart space, a hand on my lower abdomen. I'll close my eyes and ask myself, like, what do I need today? What do I need in this very moment? And hear and listen to yourself, right? Very, 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 get very, very still and really listen to yourself. Because most of the time, what I'll say is, most women will actually deny that voice.
Mm-hmm.
Like that voice will say, I just want to stay in bed for an hour longer, right? Or I just want to go for a walk in nature. And then the other side will kick in and say, you don't have time for that, right? You got to get your kids to school. You got to do this. You got to, you've got a whole day's agenda of stuff to do. And then you ignore yourself, right?
Mm.
You completely ignore and basically shut yourself down by going into the other direction of what is everyone else's needs. And so that's where I would start with every woman that I work with, right? Is like, okay, you are worth so much. You have this one life to live, and you've got so many amazing, beautiful dreams that, yes, can include your children, right? However, it's also so it's up to you to really to make this happen, right? So check in with yourself, even if it is for a minute, and then whatever it is that your soul is telling you to do, go and do it. Don't ignore it,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, this has been a really tough one for me because as you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
like my kids are just everything. But what I've been hearing now more and more, and I'm just realizing like for Beautiful Friends and working with you, and is that I'm setting an example if I take care of myself, which
Yes.
means that the next generation is then also able to take care of themselves.
Yes.
And that's what you're talking about, is that if we start doing more of that and we're examples for our children, we're just going to have more healthier grown-ups than in the future.
Oh, 100%. Because if you think about it this way, like the women that I knew who stayed in those abusive relationships, they all have children who now feel like they have to be the ones to take care of their mothers, right?
Yeah.
And then it becomes a reversal of roles, right? That is a huge burden on them in some ways, right? Not take care of them monetarily, maybe, but take care of them emotionally,
Burden. Yeah.
right? Right. And that's the thing we don't want to pass on to our children. Instead, what would it be like for them to have so much freedom because mom is so happy and fulfilled in her life that I don't have to take care of her,
Beautiful,
right?
beautiful birth.
Right. Because now I get to go and do the thing that makes me happy and fulfilled, right? Instead
And
of
not feel guilty as well, because this is
exactly,
a big one.
exactly.
Feel like someone
Guilt.
dedicated their life to you, and
Yes.
it's huge. It's kind of sits on top of your shoulders every single day,
Yes.
and you're like, how do I
Yes.
not make mistakes so they're not gonna be, disappointed, hurt, don't feel like their life was lived for, obviously speaking from personal experience. And it's not
Totally.
that like I have a beautiful, beautiful, relationship with my parents. It's, at times it's difficult to navigate, but yeah, but it's a like it's a weight on my shoulders that, what if like I disappoint them with my choices? What if like I made this transition for myself And I cannot say that I don't feel guilty, that I've chosen what I want to do, that I've chosen myself maybe for the first time in like years. And it doesn't feel, you know, that I'm free in those choices. It feels like now I have to prove that the choice is actually the right one. So
Right.
what you're saying is, it's so beautiful on so many levels. I cannot tell you.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
So that's why so many times men actually can get to those higher pillars, right? Like if you think about why is it that there are 10 directors who are male versus one director who's female, right? It's because the men are there to put themselves first, right? And so they're not carrying all of this baggage, right? And if you want to get to the place where you want to get to at the top of the mountain, right? But you're carrying all of this baggage behind you, you're carrying the guilt, you're carrying what your parents' expectations are for you, you're carrying your partner's like expectations of you, right? All of these things you're carrying behind you, then it's not that you're not going to get there. It's just you're going to get there much, much, much more slowly. And this has been also part of my mission is to like help women to say, let go of those things, right? Really let go of those things. And I know it's not easy. It's not just as easy as me telling you let go of those things, right? It's a process of working on how you can let go of those things. However, once you actually can let go of all of that stuff, the emotional things that are tying you down, then you are actually going to succeed in whatever it is that you really want to do.
I feel like it starts with self-compassion maybe, and then you can even lift people who are around you, because like sometimes I look back and like she didn't know any better like about myself, so there is no point of like beating myself up now for something that I did and like didn't choose or didn't move fast enough or didn't prioritize myself, because I honestly didn't know that it was affecting me that much.
Yeah.
And you also look back and you feel like compassionate towards like old version of yourself.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's compassion is so important. Also forgiveness, right? Self-forgiveness, right? And letting yourself know that, yeah, like you said, we don't, we didn't know better, right? And that is also why we don't blame our parents too, right? Even,
Gotcha.
yeah, because they only knew how to do everything the best that they could have done, right? And and even if I say this, even knowing the ones who were really terrible parents who are abusive parents, right? Basically. And so I'm saying it from that place that it's like, okay, well, now that I'm an adult, right? Now that we are an adult, we get to reparent ourselves in so many ways, right? And give ourselves what we didn't have as a child.
May I ask you something about, I mean, just listening to you, I don't know, there's something about your energy, and I know you're also intuitive because our first session, the way you worked with me, I was like, you can't know that. Like, I was like, I haven't said anything. Like, I haven't talked about that. Why? So that was beautiful and profound for me. And now listening to you, I was like wondering, I was like, because my agent had asked me, he was like, they were setting things new up, and he said someone else was taking over, like he was coming back and taking over, and asked us to send everything. And it's the midst of me, you know, leaving and getting a new apartment and everything. There's a lot happening, and it feels like death, to be honest, you guys. Like getting a divorce after so many years, it just drains you. Like even if you know it's the right thing to do and it's long due, but still it's really hard. And what I realized too is like I have had and I have this immense guilt, and and which is like I haven't done anything wrong as such, but I had this guilt that I wasn't able to, hold the love, that I wasn't able to stay in it, that I wasn't able to fix it, that I wasn't able to. And now I have guilt because I am moving forward, because I'm going like, okay, this isn't good, this isn't healthy. I need to step out. I also need to be fair enough to my ex-partner, because he deserves true love. He deserves a wonderful, gorgeous woman that just sweeps him off his feet and, embraces him like he deserves. How have you worked with guilt for yourself? Like, how would you work with someone like me? Like, how would you, I'm like, help. Like, how do you help me?
Yeah. I would start with what Valeria is saying, is starting with that compassion for yourself, right? And starting with a place of like really, really seeing yourself. Like if you were to put yourself in another chair, right, and just take a look at who you are, what would you see?
Oh my God. I would see someone that has really tried her best and gave it her all, and did not give up easily, and did not walk away easily. And
Exactly.
yeah, that's what I would see.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would also say, like for me, I would see somebody who is being very, very brave. And know that even though this is not an easy path, because nobody chooses to get divorced.
No.
No one would ever, when they get married, to decide, oh yeah, in 10, 20 years, I'm going to definitely be divorced. Right?
No, you
One day
guys,
for sure.
this was forever.
Right. And so it's really seeing that. It's like seeing also your courage and bravery in taking a step that it is so difficult.
Yeah. It's so difficult, because you can feel that, it's not just you.
Yes.
It's you, and there's so many that are involved, and they're just, you're suffering.
Exactly.
And it's
right.
Even if they know or feel or know, like the kids, that it's the best, it's still their parents. They don't. And I understand that. Yeah. I understand, because that is the reason I stayed for very long.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's the reason, all three of the women that I've known stayed. Right. And yet one of those women, she left, and she is now in the most beautiful marriage to a man she loves so much, right? And to me, that was a moment when I cried, because I was like, wow, she did it. She actually did it. It was so hard for her. In fact, she remarried him twice. That's how hard it was. She got divorced and then remarried this person, because it was just so hard. And it was so hard to feel like she was doing something wrong, right? Especially for her children.
Yeah.
And then eventually she did the bravest thing, which is what you're doing now. And finally, it was actually real the second time. And now, and then when she actually got divorced, it was like she said, never again. I'm not even dating. I'm not meeting anybody. I'm not even I'm never getting married again. That is not, and I, in my intuitive ways, I knew if she met the right person, that it would be she would get married, and she did.
Mm.
A couple of years later, she met the most amazing man, and now they have an incredible, incredible relationship, like a relationship that she deserves so much. Right. And you are so right, right? Like your husband also deserves a
Yes.
person who loves him so much. And,
Yes.
and he will find that person too, right? It's like, and that's the beauty of all of this too, is like when we do processes like cord cutting, which sounds super woo-woo to most
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I talk about it, it's like we want to do it in a way that actually creates the best outcome for both, right? You're getting to see him, you're cutting an energetic cord, and then getting to see him going off into that beautiful light and into the arms of somebody who cherishes him and loves him and all of
Yeah.
those things, right? And so you're literally sending them off into love and light, right? So many of us say those things and yet don't really mean it. But when you do a process of cord cutting and you're really imagining it, right, that's what can also happen. And also in terms of negotiations, right? When I talk about negotiations, I always talk about it as it doesn't have to be a fight. It doesn't have to be so full of hate and conflict and all of those things. Instead, it's like, okay, how can we come together so that we can do this in a way that we both come out of it still with respect and love for each other, right? And the love is like, oh, because there's a part of you that's always going to love him because
Yes.
that's who you've been with for so long and somebody
Yes.
you chose to have children with. He's the father of your children.
Yeah.
So there is that place. And then I know that there is also a place of being able to separate with that love for the both of you.
Mm. If one partner isn't like in a good space
Mhm.
and there's a lot of anger or resentment and you're talking about separating, like as you said in the negotiation and stuff like that, how would you approach that?
I would shift your own energy. Right. And so I would do the cord cutting exercise. I would also do a process of like getting really clear about your intentions for all of this.
Mm.
Right. And I'm just going to give an example of like I worked with this man actually a while ago, and he was in the process of a separation, and there was some spousal support situations, and um, he was actually. I mean, this is amazing, and I think it's such a testament to who he is, but he was over giving. He
Mm.
was giving more than his share, basically, right? Mainly because he didn't want to fight. He just did not want to deal with it. And then so, I helped him to, I coached him on a process of really getting clear with his intentions. And I said, what is your intention for even paying spousal support and doing all of this, right? And he said, well, one, I don't want to fight with my ex-partner. And then two, um, and I was like, okay, well, what is something deeper? What is the whole, get to the heart of it? And he said, well, I really want to spend more time with my daughter. And I said, that's it, right? I said, if you can really articulate that clearly to your partner,
Mm.
I'm sure that's what she would want as well. And so the next time he went to go pick up his daughter, he said that. He said, well, there's some things that are shifting in my financial situation. So there may be a little bit less, money in terms of the spousal support. However, I just want you to know, I really want to spend more time with my daughter. Right. And he called me after dropping off his daughter and he said, you'll never believe it. This was the first time ever that there was no fight, nothing. She just said, okay.
That is
Right.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That is beautiful.
Yeah. So we can shift things energetically, right? It's the same thing as, have you ever read Eat, Pray, Love? Okay. So there was that part in the book when she is trying to get a divorce with her husband, and her husband would not give
favorite part.
her,
I even know what you're gonna say.
yeah, would
Tell me.
not give her the divorce. Yeah. He would not give her the divorce. He would not sign the papers, would not, right? Until the moment when she energetically let go, right? When she energetically let go, and really did it from this place of love and light and all of those things, all of a sudden he came back and signed the papers.
I was gonna say it's like something along the lines, but you know how she was saying that every time, because it was a difficult situation and she outgrew this relationship, she was all over the place. And she was saying that every time I'm thinking about you, I'm sending you like the lights and like the good vibes and the energy. And obviously her husband wasn't in the same mental space to receive it or to reciprocate it in any way. But somehow it doesn't really matter. I think it's what you're saying exactly. It's your intention and what you're willing to give, and but also like you have to understand your own capacity. Because sometimes through my experience, what I tend to do, I'm like, I feel that I can give more than it's actually then cost me later on. I can feel energetically that it's probably I overdoing it, and but it's also like a learning curve, obviously. Probably it's better to overgive than to be stingy. I don't know.
Well, it really just comes from your intention. Like what is your intention behind it, right? Because sometimes it's about, sometimes it, yes, sure, yeah, you can, in terms of I mean, there is no limit to love, right? To being a loving person and a kind person, I think. However, when it comes to, other types of negotiations, I think like the best thing to do is make sure your energy is super clear, right? And really getting rid of, yeah, like all of the anger, the stuff, the things that are kind of like keeping you in that relationship, right? Because the more that your anger and stuff is in that relationship, then that other person is going to hold on to that relationship, right? Because your energy is also holding on. Even if your mind and your mouth is saying, I want to be out of this relationship, but your energy isn't yet.
Can we like use this also, like let's take a director or writer, a producer, actor, and someone that are having difficulties finding their true value, and also negotiating, like saying like this is the amount that I am charging and I am goddamn good. You're lucky that you're getting me from that price. Like just saying. So, if you're smart enough, take it, But like where would be the process there? How would you work with them? Because I think this is something we creatives have a lot, and particularly women, it's like our self-worth and going like, I can charge this. And I don't have to feel like I can be like feel sexy about it and go like, this is the value, and I will, provide, and even above, like we'll do more because that's kind of what we do. How would you work with them if there's someone that is listening now and it's going like, how would I negotiate? How can I find the number even? How can I even go like, this is what I'm allowed to, or I want to charge, and do it in a way that you feel good and not like, "Hey, it's gonna cost," you know what I mean? Where you're just like, oh my God, like, can I say
Yes.
this? How would you
Yes.
work with them?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I always work with when it comes to pricing is energetically feeling what that number might be in your body, right?
Okay.
So mainly because like a lot of people say, charge what you're worth. Sure, that sounds great. However, if your body doesn't believe it, the other person won't believe it,
Yeah.
right? Like if I sit here and tell you, I charge $1 million for my coaching, right?
That would be amazing.
That would be amazing. And yet my body doesn't believe it, right? Because
Wow.
that's not what I'm charging. And so you automatically don't believe it. And you're going to come to me. And even if you don't know this, but in your mind, you're already going, well, yeah, that's ridiculous. I don't, I'm not going to work with this person for that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the message you're going to be receiving, right? Because again,
Mm-hmm.
our energy is what really conveys the messages, right? It's why, like, anytime you go into a room, people already know what you're feeling, how you're feeling. Like, people read all of your energy, right, in a room. It's the same thing in a negotiation. It's the same thing in everything that you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the director, let's say even an A-list actor,
Mm-hmm.
right? If they are going in guns blazing and their team is fighting for top dollar, like let's say, okay, $10 million for a movie, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
$20 million for a movie. If they don't energetically feel like they deserve that or they know that in their body, when they get on set, that's when stuff happens, when there's like conflict and uncomfortableness, right? Because then the director is like, oh, this person better be worth it because they really try to, take blood from a stone, right, from us. Right. And then energetically, the actor is also going to feel that and think, I gotta prove myself. I gotta prove myself, right? Like every single day and then they're basically going to burn themselves out, right? Get very overwhelmed. And then the collaboration, the project itself is not going to yield the results that everybody wants because of that energy. However, if energetically that actor is feeling like 100% I am in the place of delivering and knowing my worth, and I am going in and making $10 million for this movie, right? Then that negotiation will not be as hard. There will still be back and forth. However, they're going to understand that person's worth and say it's totally worth it, right?
Mm-hmm.
This person's going to make us not just 10 million, but this film is going to make 500 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. And we're willing to do that, right? And then once they get started in the filming process, there is much more ease and collaboration, right? As well.
This, I think, the most important thing in life in general. It's not only about the money, but like energy
Yes.
really solves all the things. Because people
Yes.
first they would think that it's audiovisual, it's what we see, it's what we hear.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, it's like really this first, like animals, this feel of the person that you get. And especially if you share the same physical space, if you're in a close proximity, you feel if someone is not like, if they're saying something and the energy is off, you're like, that's not,
Right.
it's not good.
Right. Exactly. Right.
And
Yeah.
how then do you work? Because I feel like it's not a linear process, because we are all going through like, all those ups and downs, and sometimes we are so, high in the clouds, and then other days we're just like so low that we don't even believe they can still rise. How it's like, is it a daily practice? Is it something that you mentioned that it's like a manifestations? Is it those what are the daily moments that one can incorporate in their routine to start even looking in this direction?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for saying that it's not a linear process.
Yeah.
I think I want all my clients to hear that, right? Because so many times I'll have certain people who will say to me, like, we've been working together for a while, but things aren't happening yet, and I'm like, okay, but it's not, right? Like it's not a linear process,
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think people think that growth is just like, okay, incrementally going up, 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 and up. And
No.
I like to think of it almost like a cone shape, where at the bottom it's very wide,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're in the beginning when you're working on it, you're working on a huge amount of stuff. But then as you get closer and closer to the top, it's not that the top is like super sharp. It's still
Mm.
there, right? And yet it's smaller, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it also takes you less time to kind of brush it off and keep moving forward, right?
Mhm.
The more growth work that you're doing. And so when it comes to like timing and how much work you have to put into it, it's very individualized, I would say, to everyone, right? Like some people, like because I went through a trauma-informed training program, we were going through stuff in the 9 months, right? And so that was a daily thing, work, 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 and it was lots of tears all the time, right? And anger release and, all of the things, right? And so, yes, you can get through a lot in a short amount of time. However, to me, it's actually even better to sort of slowly integrate, right? And do it in a place of like feeling safe enough in your body to actually do the work. Because if we don't feel safe enough in our body, then the work doesn't, the work can kind of come in and then go out super quickly, right? Which
Mhm.
means that it's like, oh, I got it. I got that aha moment, right? And then it's like it didn't quite integrate and land in your body. So then you don't implement from that new place, right? And you're not as embodied and feeling that same sense of freedom.
That's the thing. It's also when you confront with something in the real world, because we all have this experience of like going to some sort of retreat for 3 days or like even for a week, and there is this almost this official space where you can experience all those things. But when you're back into the real world, the reality is so very different, and there are so many things that kind of like provoke you.
Yes.
And if you not keep practicing it, and if you're not implementing those changes that happened back then, not gonna stick. You just go back to
Exactly.
your old ways, and that's it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And that's why I do like some daily practices, right? Like the one that I had mentioned before about just checking in with myself and asking myself, like, what do I need? Right? What do I need today? What do I need in this very moment? Right. Because that is such a good way to start your day and to really listen to yourself, first and foremost, before you actually even listen to anyone else,
Mhm.
right? Whether it's a podcast or a book or anything, right? It's like,
Right. Okay, I have two questions now for you.
yes.
This one it's an insider thing, you guys. But you will know then when you start working with Katy, which I highly recommend. And that is, you said one thing and you said you even listen to podcasts while you're taking a shower. And I have been thinking I'm like, how does she do that? Like, how do you do that? Because I think it's awesome. I mean, I can listen to music and take a shower, but listening to a podcast, I wouldn't like. And then I'm like, how do you do that?
I do that actually.
Is your sound system at home so awesome that you just hear it through all the water and all the, or are you taking a bath?
Well, the funny thing is, it's like there are certain podcasts that, yes, that the audio is actually really good, and I can listen to those right in the shower. Some podcasts, the audio isn't as clear, so I don't listen to those, but I do pick the ones that I can actually hear in the
So,
shower, right?
of course, she's talking about ambitiously
Of
intelligent.
course.
Of course.
Top of the list.
Of course.
No, but for
Yes.
real, there are like those things that you can on this how are they called? This is the speakers that you can put in your shower and they're like water resistant. That's what
Is that what you have, Katie?
I actually
I do
just
have.
I just actually listen to it on my iPhone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my iPhone is pretty good that, yeah,
Whoa, you
I
must
can
have
hear
like, you must be like Superman or something, like, I don't know, ears that are just like, take it all. Like, that is amazing. Well, okay. And the second question is, I would love for you to tell us about your program. Like,
it.
how is it set up? How long? Like, how do you work? I would love to
Yeah.
hear that.
Yeah. So I definitely have one-on-ones, and I work with people usually 10. I start with everyone with 10 sessions because that
Mhm.
is the, right amount of time to like really integrate and do a lot of the work that we need to get done, right? And I also have this group program that is a year-long program. And I know that it sounds like, what? I have to dedicate a whole year. However, this is how we integrate those habits, right?
Yeah.
And so each month we are taking one step of this financial process, okay? And it's both the practical, but also, more importantly, I think, the emotional pieces of
Mm-hmm.
this process,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you get to work on it during that month in 30-day chunks, right? 30,
Mm-hmm.
31-day chunks. And then at the end of that month, we do what I call a hot seat coaching call. And then on that call, I coach people, right? So, we did a little bit of coaching today. We didn't do tons, but I mean, I definitely um, did a little bit today, and we go into more in depth on those calls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where we
Mm-hmm.
can actually go really deeply, in the time that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes people feel like nervous or afraid to do it in front of a group. And then,
Mm.
however, here's what I've noticed, right? Because in the very beginning, when I first started the program, I also felt a little bit like, oh, is it going to work with a bigger group, right? Do people want to talk about this in a group? And what I've noticed over and over again is that what Brene Brown talks about is very true, right? Because she says shame likes to hide in dark corners.
Yeah.
And so the
Mhm.
more we're able to be seen and witnessed with our vulnerabilities and get coaching through it, the easier it is to actually release whatever it is that's been keeping us stuck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen this, on an emotional level as well on a practical level, right? Like a couple of years ago, I had somebody in the group who had over $100,000 of debt, credit card debt. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to talk about it. Then, as soon as he talked about it, he manifested $75,000 of that money
Wow.
and was able to pay off $75,000 very quickly after really even just talking about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, as soon as the shame went away, then he was able to start to open up his mind and his energetic frequency to attract that
Mm-hmm.
money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the last 25,000, we made a plan, a very
Mm-hmm.
practical plan to get it paid off, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he was able to pay off $100,000 in 1 year, 1 year. And it wasn't because of
Amazing.
just reading a book and applying very practical pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that would have been impossible. But instead, it was because he was able to open up to the whole group, talk about it, and say, yes, this is what I'm working with. And what do I do now? And then that's what opened up everything as soon as he let out that place.
Mm.
I can attest to that because that's how I felt too. The first time I had the hot seat, I was in the hot seat. Um, I was like, am I really gonna do this in front of people that I do not know? And do I want to talk about it? And afterwards, because of the way you just held the space and you made me feel immensely safe, and I knew I was in good hands and I trusted you. I had never felt such a relief. It was exactly that. I had never, like, I was just like, it felt like, I don't know, like 10 private sessions or something, because it was just like I said it in front of other people and I was ashamed of it.
Yes.
And I felt horrendous. And that was, yeah. So I can attest to that, that is really true. And it's beautiful and helpful. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think also part of it is it's like in front of the people you don't know, right? So they don't know who you are. You don't know who they are. You've probably seen them for the first time and the last time. So I think it's also.
Yeah.
But it is a group. It is a group. Sorry, that it is a group that
Yes.
we have like a whole year. So it's like you get to
Oh,
know
okay,
each other.
okay.
It's not a
Yes.
one.
Yes.
No, it's you have a whole year with them.
Yeah, yeah. You do get to know everybody pretty well, and then
Mm-hmm.
especially those who show up and get coaching and all of that kind of stuff. And then also, I think, you know, I mean, this, I could say this. I think my group is very, very loving. Like, I think
Yes.
everybody in the group is really loving and supportive of each other. And so I think it creates a very safe space too. You know, it's not
Yes.
just me. I do think it's also the group.
That is true. It's a beautiful group. So that is true. And also one thing that I want to mention, or I would love you to talk to, is like in the 12 months, there's always a different theme.
Yes. Yes. Every single month we have a very different theme.
So can you name like few themes that you would have, like let's say March? Like what was the theme in March?
Yeah. In March, we were talking about decluttering. So decluttering energetically, physically, mentally, and then also if you have debts, to declutter your debts. Right.
And then going to April, then what do you have in April?
It's all about savings and self-worth. And the reason that those two things come together is because the idea of savings, having an amount in your savings account, really is tied into your own self-worth, right? Because it's the energy of having something. It's like the energy of not just as soon as it goes out, it comes back in, right? Instead, it's like I can hold it, I can receive it and hold it and have something that is just mine. And that's also really a good place, you know, good thing to have, right? And then there's also the energy of like freedom, right? Because to me, having a certain amount in your savings account, right, your necessary expenses saved up in a high yield savings account, really feels like freedom for most people, right? It's like, okay, I always have 6 months, a year, you know, like I always tell creatives, like have a year's worth, right, of expenses saved up. Because if you do, then whatever happens, you have that money
Yeah.
in your account, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
So even for the creatives, like all of us, that it's important that we make sure that we have like a year savings, because then we can also feel free in our creative work, because we do have these dry months, as we call them, or but then that isn't an issue.
Right. Absolutely. It's not an issue, right? Yeah, because if you have, 12 months of necessary expenses saved up, you don't have to worry about it, right? You can use that. And then of course use it, right? Like that's what I see a lot too, is like people will just kind of keep it in there and
Touch
not
it.
use it. Yeah, at all. And now I always like that's what it's there for. You can always replenish it, once you get another show or whatever, right? You get another gig.
That is a beautiful, abundant way of seeing it. It's like you save it up, you have the year, then you have your, let's say, 3 months or even a half a year. I mean, it can happen. It can even be the year. Then use it. Like, don't be afraid to touch it. This is what you saved it for.
Exactly.
So you're always in a good space and you're always feeling safe.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. Katy, this has been amazing. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. As I said, I just highly recommend, if you're listening or watching, you need to watch, because you know what? Katy has this amazing pink microphone. It is so cute. And I always have loved your backdrop. Like every time we work, I saw it. I was like, oh, this is gorgeous. So that is, it's so fun. But yeah, I highly, highly recommend that you check out Katy. We will have everything in the show notes, like how to reach out to her, and there also the homepage for the program or the webpage for the program. So and it's a beautiful, I can attest to that. I am in it as it is, and I took the 10 private sessions too, and I highly recommend both. And yeah, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're really
Thank you.
busy.
No,
You're a
thank you
very
both.
successful woman, which I love. I love being surrounded by kick-ass, gorgeous, successful women like you. So
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you both. Yeah, this was a beautiful conversation, and I really enjoyed talking to you both.
Thank you. It was a pleasure having you.
Gorgeous.